Hello and welcome back to this training. Now we're on to the exciting part where we start to see the results of the calculations and get numbers that really mean something to us rather than ones we're plugging in. I'm going to break this across two different training videos. So the first one is just going to look at sell-through percentages. The second one will look at how that impacts on the actual royalties you get. So if we go over to the sheet again. So this time I'm going to copy video 4 because this is exactly the same data, so we won't mess around re-entering it. We're just now actually looking at how it comes through. I've also, just to put it on the screen so you can see it, I've done a snapshot of these numbers here so that we can see them in the same place as the results we're going to look at. So the first thing we want to look at is the book 1 sell-throughs. So you can see here we are in here looking at this one here. This is the sell-through from book 1 to later books in the series. And funnily enough, book 1 to book 1 is 100%, as it always has to be. And let me pull these back up so you can see the sales numbers here next to it. So we can see that from book 1 to book 2, the sell-through was 80%, which is not overly surprising. 1,800, I deliberately chose fairly easy numbers. And from book 1 to book 3 is 75%, so 1,750, that's 3/4. So that's not too bad. Obviously, if these were much nastier numbers, it would be a lot harder to work out that calculation. And what that means in real numbers, at 80%, it means that for every 10 people who buy your book, 8 of them will go on and buy book 2, and rather strangely 7.5 will buy book 3. Clearly that's where you can't apply it exactly, but you know, if it was 100 people who bought, then you'd expect 75 people to buy book 3. Now the really interesting one, sorry, that's useful for the calculations. The really interesting one for us will be the actual, actually don't need that now, we can make that one go away, is this section here, which shows the sell-through from book to book. So from book 1, there is no book before book 1, so we don't put anything in there. If you did have something like a prequel that you're selling or giving away, you could treat that as book number 1 and move it through. It's not something I've looked at actually, but we can certainly do that. And book 2, we're seeing 80%. Actually, those numbers would be quite useful. So from book 1 to book 2, 80%, well, that's exactly the same as before, of course. But from book 2 to book 3 is 94%. So while here it looks like book 3 is an even lower percent, that's because it's based on you've already lost 20% of people going to book 2. None of them are likely to read book 3 because they haven't read book 2. But you can see here, of those people who complete book 2, 94% of them go on and read book 3. So you know that you've pretty much got everything you need in place there to make sure your sell-throughs go. And it also lets you see where you spot where you're losing readers. So for example, if this was 33%, then you'd know you've got a major problem between book 2 and book 3. And as in the earlier example, that might mean you need to go and check the back matter of book 2 and make sure you've actually put a link in there so that people know book 3 exists. So that is it. That's quite a short one for these numbers, and then in the next video we will be going on to the actual royalty amounts as part of these calculations.